This past weekend, Jon Favreau's The Lion King was the king of the box office, so today we're going to stop and rank all 9 Jon Favreau films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean Chandler, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place to consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of Jon Favreau's movies. Which ones do you love? Which ones do you hate? And everything in between. And his filmography has some pretty high highs and some pretty low lows thrown into the mix. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place is Cowboys and Aliens. This is such a phenomenal cast, a fun concept, but with just dull execution and characters you just can't care much about. Harrison Ford's character actually has a pretty good arc throughout the film as kind of this very harsh cowboy inside the mix, but when they make Daniel Craig's character this very gruff drifter that we don't know almost anything about him, none of the characters are just likable. None of them are the person that you're really rooting for throughout the film because they're just written to be such harsh cowboys. And then when you take the direction that they took such a simple concept, cowboys and aliens duking it out, there's so much potential for that to be a really fun idea, especially when you have Indiana Jones and James Bond jumping into the mix on it. But it's played so straight for some reason. And when you have the director of Ironman who is able to do the mix of strong character arcs, character driven with great amounts of adventure inside of it and lots of fun sprinkled throughout it, this is a movie that at the end of the day, it's confusing why it is such a bland movie that just does not engage you. Like, I don't hate this movie. It's just so mediocre and forgettable given everything involved. So it's easily in last place. Number 8 is Zathura, A Space Adventure. If you don't know, the book that this is based on, Zathura, is a sequel to the book Jumanji. Technically, this film isn't a sequel to the original film Jumanji, but it's like a spiritual sequel to it. It's like a cousin to that film. And of the 3 Jumanji-esque films we have, this is easily my least favorite of the bunch. It just never resonates with me as I think it should. Even though it's set in space, it has the adventures of the Jumanji franchise. You got Dax Shepard as one of our leads inside of it. Kristen Stewart actually giving kind of an energetic performance outside of her normal here. But because the nature of the story is like a house goes up into space, it feels very contained considering we're going all the way up there, flying from planet to planet. Aliens are invading, big gigantic robots are attacking, but it feels much smaller scale than it actually is because of the premise that's kind of involved here. My kids have basically had all 3 of these Jumanji films on loop ever since Welcome to the Jungle came out. And this one to me easily is the one that I enjoy the least, that I get invested in the least, and that I prefer that they don't select to watch. Next up is Iron Man 2. Now this is a frustrating movie for me because the cast here is still fantastic. The action, when it happens, is still phenomenal. It's exciting, it's vibrant. The problem here is the script itself is just all over the place, as if they had a brainstorming meeting and they just wrote down 100 ideas on a whiteboard and they went, yeah, let's just do all of those, and they just squished them all into this one movie. And because of that, as you go through the film, you're in hearings, and then you're in a mad scientist lab, and then you're in a race, and then you're in another lab, and then Tony Stark's meeting with Nick Fury, and then he's in a lab, and when we're solving a problem over here. And it's not even like any of these specific plot lines are all that bad, that they just can't be all squished into one movie. It's well documented. Jon Favreau wanted 3 years to make this movie in order to get the script right, but Marvel Studios said, no, you have 2 years because we're trying to get to an Avengers movie, so your movie has to come out in 2010, and I think because of that, the movie really suffered. I don't hold this movie against Jon Favreau. I do hold this one against Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios, but still, at the end of the day, it's one of Jon Favreau's weaker films. Coming in at number 6 is Made. This was Jon Favreau's directorial debut. He wrote it, he directed, and he starred in it with Vince Vaughn. It's a simple kind of crime comedy that's really a buddy film about the relationship between Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn's characters, where whereas Jon Favreau's trying to do the right thing and take care of the kind of family unit that he's kind of structured at his house, and Vince Vaughn is just this idiot that kind of messes everything up. It's a really nice little comedy. It's not big and ambitious. It's not a big flashy film. It's just a nice film that has a charm to it that I've always really enjoyed. It's a film that's actually really important to me. It came out in the year 2000 when I was first getting into smaller films. This was just a little indie film that he made kind of on his own, and it's one of the first non-big blockbusters that I saw in the theater. It's one of the first smaller films that I felt like, oh, I'm discovering something as I saw it. I had to see it at the Art House Theater here in town. So I've always really enjoyed this film. It's not a fantastic film. Vince Vaughn's character is too dense. He's too stupid. He's too mouthy, and he just kind of goes too far with what they try to do with his character that it becomes off-putting at a certain point in time in the film. But overall, it's a movie that I think more people need to check this one out. And it's also fun just to see a young Jon Favreau and a young Vince Vaughn kind of becoming the personas that they would later become. Bringing us into the top 5 is The Lion King. So the film that came out this last week, it is absolutely dividing audiences, where one half of people feel like, what's the point of a shot-for-shot remake with animals singing these songs that aren't able to emote emotions? And the other half of people just kind of connecting with the nostalgia of it and appreciating this new version of the story that they kind of grew up with. As for me, I'm in this category right here. I had a great time with it. It worked for me. I totally understand why a lot of people didn't connect with this film. But as for me, I mean, just the visuals of it are absolutely stunning. I got to see it in a true IMAX theater that just kind of wowed me with the incredible imagery of these photorealistic CGI. And then from there, for me, the movie felt like a cover of one of my favorite songs. It's a different band playing it. They're playing the same exact song, but I dug what they were singing. They sang it really well, even though it doesn't necessarily have the magic of the original. I fully understand where people are coming from when they kind of make the point that, yeah, photorealistic animals can't emote. They just look like animals, and animals don't have human emotions and eyes that tear up and things like that. So the movie feels dull. I understand where you're coming from, and I felt a little bit of that. I would have compared it more to kind of watching one of those Disney nature documentaries. That's kind of what it felt like at times to me, but those can be fun, and this one would have been the most fun of all of them because it had the best music, the best jokes, all that fun stuff. So for me, I really did like it. Next up is The Jungle Book. This film is another technological masterpiece, and the first film that did this photorealistic from beginning to end CGI recreation of a jungle where really only this child is the only live action thing inside of the entire film. What I think this movie did so well is that it took the kind of the bare bones story of the original Jungle Book Disney film and kind of streamlined it into this straightforward adventure that lent itself to this format very well, where the simple story just allows for it to kind of have all the big adventure action sequences that you want inside of this film. It delivers the exact experience that it promises. It has fairly simple, straightforward character arcs, simple, straightforward emotions that you're supposed to feel, and it does all of them with excellence, and that's why I think this movie works really well. And because you have a human child inside, an actual actor inside of it, and that's the one that has the big character arcs, you get the emotions where some people didn't feel that with The Lion King. Just changing out that one lead character for a human can make such a big difference in how people kind of resonate and can connect with a film, and I think the comparison between The Jungle Book and The Lion King is the perfect example of that. Real quick before I give you my top 3, be sure to share your ranking down below. We're going to disagree. That's the fun part. Let's just keep it nice and friendly. Also, after this video, check out this playlist up above. It's got some of my other rankings of directors' filmographies. I haven't done a ton of them yet. I'm looking to work on that, but I do have like Nolan, Shyamalan in there, and then Tarantino is coming this Saturday. In third place is Chef, a charming little film about a chef, his family, and his career. At the center of it, you have this chef, played by Jon Favreau, once again, writing, directing, and starring in the film, who's kind of found himself in a creative rut and kind of goes back to his roots to kind of rediscover himself. And in a way, I think it was kind of intentionally meant as an allegory for his own career, where he started with a small little movie called Made and did very personal films, and then he kind of did Ironman 2 and he did Cowboys and Aliens, and it felt like he lost himself a little bit and kind of took a bit of a thrashing from the critics. This movie kind of has a little bit of that arc inside of it of someone rediscovering themselves. It's funny along the way. There's a lot of cameos, like Robert Downey Jr.'s inside of it, Scarlett Johansson's inside of it. But at its core, it's a great little character arc, fun little family moments, a bit of a road trip movie at times where they stop in Austin, right here where I live. And so because of that, it's a film that I think connects with a lot of people just because it's kind of heartwarming, uplifting, and a movie that just kind of touches on not a lot of nice little notes inside of it. If you haven't seen Chef, you should definitely check this one out. And if you enjoy Chef and you haven't seen Made, you should go check out Made. Our runner-up is Elf. I absolutely love this film. I think it's one of the funniest Christmas movies. It's one of the most rewatchable Christmas movies, and I think it's probably Will Ferrell's best film, or at least it's my favorite of his films. And at the core of it is that because Buddy is just such a likable, charming character, because he's so innocent, so loving towards everyone else that you just can't help but enjoy his shenanigans. Add into the mix, it's a great concept for the man-child that is Will Ferrell to do his shtick, and combine that with a nice, eager, young Jon Favreau trying to make his mark as an up-and-coming director. To me, this is just a special film where it feels like all of the jokes land. Whether you're talking about a bit about elves living in trees, baking cookies in the intro to the film, whether you're talking about just the aesthetics of the North Pole, making it look like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special from the 1960s, the way they used forced perspective to have Will Ferrell sit in a grown man's lap, or just all the fish out of water comedy that they caught Zooey Deschanel before her career really kind of took off. This was one of her first big roles. To me, it's just a movie that every single time it makes me laugh out loud. It puts a grin on my face, and I just adore this film. I strongly debated putting this film at number one. But coming in at number one is Ironman. It's a film that's just as magical, just as memorable, and way more influential. The original Ironman is just such an important film in cinematic history on so many different levels. Obviously, it kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's important because the only reason that happened is because they nailed the tone of how to do drama, fun, character arcs, funny, all in one movie without it being cheesy, without it feeling like 5 different people directed it. No, Jon Favreau, Kevin Feige crafted the template, the tone of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe that as of the time of recording this video, just a few days ago, Endgame became the highest grossing film of all time, and that tone goes back to what they created with this specific film. Add into the mix the redemption of Robert Downey Jr., who was a washed up actor who had so many personal problems, it had destroyed his career, and then he gets this role. They had to fight to cast him in it, and then of course he goes on to become the most dominant box office force of the last 10 years via the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then just the film itself, without it having all the weight of the rest of the MCU on its shoulders, is able to tell this very character-driven story about Tony Stark and his journey from selfish playboy to superhero inside the film. It's funny, the action is fantastic, the characters are endearing, people that you actually care about even when they're jerks, you want them to be redeemed. For me, this is another very special film that he directed, that he kind of brought to the screen. So for me, it comes in at number one. Remember to check out that playlist right over there with my ranking of some other directors' filmographies, and also Tarantino is coming this Saturday. Also, let me know down below in the comment section, what other directors do you want me to rank their filmographies? I'd like to start working on some of those this fall. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.